it's Lori from Love and Create, and today I'm going to show you how to make these fiber rainbows. So they are super great little piece of joy to have up in your home or give as a gift, and they're really easy to create. So whether you got your kit from my website, which is loveandcreate.co, or you have all the supplies yourself, we'll go ahead and get started. So for your supplies, you're going to need 3 colors of yarn or macrame string. We're going to be making a 3-arch rainbow. You're going to need your needle and thread. This is crochet thread. You're going to need a wire brush, that's to fringe out your tassel at the end, some pliers, sharp scissors, masking tape, thin macrame cord for the hanger, and 5mm macrame cord for the actual arches. To create the shape of our rainbow, we're going to lay out the biggest arch first. So this is going to dictate the size of your rainbow. So make sure you kind of play around and see what's going to look good on your wall. You're going to cut it in that arch shape, and then I like to measure it out, but you can always just use that first cut as your guide for the rest. You're going to cut 3 strands of that same length. Mine was 19 inches to start with, so my biggest arch was 19 inches. This was a little bit of a smaller rainbow. And then you're going to take your masking tape and tape those 3 pieces together. And this is going to create that round shape. If you have macrame cord that is 10mm or bigger, or macrame string, cotton string, you can go ahead and use that, and that will save you this step. So then we're going to repeat that process. So we're going to make it an arch. We're going to lay the next layer inside of that. Oops, I had a little long string. So we're going to lay our next layer, arch inside of this one to measure it out. Cut 3 of that size and repeat that process for the smallest arch as well. So we're going to have 3 arches total and tape them each set of 3 together. Once you've got all your macrame rope cut in those 3 strand sections and taped together, you're going to go ahead and choose your first color. You're going to wrap it around one time and make a simple knot. You want to have the tail of the knot coming down in towards the arch of the rainbow, so not out towards the extra strands. So that way you can wrap the string or the yarn or whatever you're using around that tail. Then you're going to go ahead and cut off the tail so it's just about 1 inch long. That way you don't have to wrap over too much. I'm going to carefully hold my finger over that tail and just wrap around. Now what happened here is I'm using macrame string, and if you wrap a certain way, sometimes it looks a little sloppy. So I realized that, and I'm going the other direction. So you can see I get a little tangle here because I have to go in that one certain direction. You're going to wrap around nice and secure, but not super tight. You want to be able to manipulate that string as you wrap around. So now that I've covered up the tail, oops, got a little tangle there. Now that I've covered up the tail, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure, keep wrapping, and I'm going to squish that up together. So all you're going to do is wrap around, and you can see here I start kind of getting a little groove. You'll hang the rope if you want to, and you can just let the rope work for you and wrap around as you go. So you don't need to keep them super close together, and then you just scrunch it up as you go along. So the only thing you want to be careful of is not wrapping the yarn or string around itself, like overlapping, otherwise you'll have a bump. The macrame string I'm using right now to wrap around my first arch is getting a little tangled. You can see that it's kind of not working with me here. So what I end up doing is cutting off a strand so that I can kind of unravel that. So you're going to just keep wrapping until you get to equal sides where you have the fringe is equal to the first side fringe. So what I'm doing here is measuring my fringe out. Because I cut the cord or the string that I'm wrapping around, I actually can't make it equal because I don't have quite enough. But if you are pulling from a spool, you'll want to measure out so that you have, or you want to stop when you have equal sides there. So I'm just going to wrap the string around my 2 fingers all the way up in between that hole I created and back down towards me. All I'm doing here is creating a simple knot. This is not going to be our end all be all knot, so it just needs to be secure enough to last you to making the rest, because you're going to end up connecting it to something else. So then I like to lay it in a rainbow shape just to keep it as my guide as I go along with the rest of the parts. So then I'm going to go ahead and grab the next shortest little section of ropes, and that's going to be for my next arch. So this is the middle arch because I'm making a 3 arch rainbow. And then I'm going to decide on color. So you see me, I might have decided this before, sometimes I do it right after or during, and this is going to be my color selection. So I went with pink, and I'm just going to take that pink and make a knot right around the same place that I made that first knot for my first arch. That way the fringe at the bottom matches up. I call these the clouds. So you can see I make the knot and then I measure it against where I made the other one. Boom, perfect. And then I tie 1 knot, clip off my tail, so it's about 1 inch long, and then start wrapping. So I hold that tail down with my hands. You want to have a nice loose spool of or skein of yarn, and I kind of start a little bit slower when I wrap around the tail, but then once I get going I go faster and a little sloppier further apart because I'm just going to squish it together. So you want to make sure you're not going super tight. It might look like I'm wrapping tightly, but I'm not. It's not tight. So you don't want it loosey-goosey, but you also don't want to take your aggressions out on your rainbow. So just continue that until you get to the end. So I'm just going to wrap until I get to equal distance so it matches the other one. I always just keep checking, making sure there's no gaps between those arches. I kind of squish them together and keep checking to make sure it looks good. You can always scoot it at the end a little bit, but I like to make sure I at least have enough. You're going to cut off a nice good foot, wrap that yarn around your 2 fingers all the way back up, open up those fingers, put it down inside, the yarn down inside, and then pull it back down through the inside of that loop. And that's going to create what I found to be the best knot that you can reposition so that it's towards the back of your rainbow. Okay, so I just always like to keep it looking like a rainbow so I have a nice guide of what I'm working on. Then I'm going to grab my shortest bundle of macrame rope, and I end up actually trimming some off here so that it's easier to work with because I cut it pretty long to start with. And I'm just going to use my last color, tie a knot right where the fringe should be, and then start wrapping. So I'm just continually checking. Looks like I got just to about the matching point. I'm going to wrap it a couple more times around, smush that up, and then lay my 2 fingers across the top of my work. Bring that yarn up and over and in between, and then back down towards me as I move my fingers away, creating that final knot that I can move around a little bit as needed. So I'm just going to form it in my rainbow shape, and it's time to get sewing. So you're going to go ahead and grab your needle and thread that needle. So I use a soft sculpture needle that is used for doll making, and probably about 4 feet of crochet thread. But honestly, you can use any kind of thread, it'll work just fine, and most needles will work fine as well. So you're going to thread it through, take that long end and tie a triple knot. This is going to be your anchor so it doesn't pull through as you're sewing. So just try 3 or 4 knots right on top of each other, creating a little ball that becomes your anchor. So once I get those knots done, the other end of the string is just kind of loose in there, and it's pulled about halfway down my string. So I'm going to poke the needle in through my baby arch, pull it all the way till I get to that anchor point. The direction doesn't matter too much right now. And then I'm just going to poke it in about 1 more time, right about the same place. So creating kind of a circle-ish. This is what's called a back stitch. So if you know how to sew, you're making a back stitch here. And this is starting out your thread so that it doesn't move around. So nothing can kind of get pulled out there. And then I'm going to line them up, making sure that my ends of my yarn match up. And I'm going to poke my needle, stitch through each layer or each arch. And as I'm sewing, I want to make sure that I'm getting into the center, but not like too deep where I'm going to show through the back of the rainbow. You have to be careful, it kind of tends to get knotted here, especially if you have a really long string. And then just pull, pull, pull till you get to the end. You want to make sure you're tight, but not so tight that it changes the shape of the rainbow. So see how you kind of adjust and make sure it's not pulling it too far. And then you're going to go back down the way you came through each of your arches again towards the bottom of your tassels, or your fringe I should say. And then now you get to start skipping a little bit. So you're going to skip about an inch, inch and a half, go through all three, back towards the outside, pull, skip about an inch, and come back down towards you. So notice I'm continually going to make it in the shape of the rainbow. Whatever shape you sew in is the shape it's going to turn out like. So make sure that you don't sew it in a straight line, or you will have a straight line rainbow. It won't look like a rainbow. So go through all three, pull. If you need any help pushing that needle through, you can either use your pliers, or you can use something to kind of push that needle, like a wooden spoon or something soft. And you're just going to keep stitching along. So skip about an inch, go through all three layers, boom, boom, boom. And then again, skip about an inch and keep going. So as I get near the end, I'm still continuing to sew in that rainbow shape, making sure it still looks like the rainbow I want it to look. And now I'm towards the bottom, so I'm going to go kind of double up here. So all the way down close towards the fringe, pull it towards me. Got a little knot there that I had to fix. That's okay. And then I'm going to go right back again up through so that I make sure to lock that bottom in shape. In its shape. And then once you are finished sewing, you need to knot your thread. So the way that I do that, let me just finish doing this part really quick. Sometimes it gets a little hard to push through. You can always use something to kind of push it through, like something soft, a wooden spoon or something. So then I'm just going to come back to where I can form a knot. So I've got my needle still in there. I'm going to poke it through one of the arches. It doesn't really matter, just I'm in the back here. Keep that loop open, don't pull it all the way. And then take my needle inside that loop. And what that does is creates a knot. So then I pull it, boom, you have a knot. And then I'm going to go back in through the exact same loop I already created, and this will give me a double knot, and pull that needle through again. If this is too complicated, you can leave the string loose and tie it to one of your yarn tails, and it'll knot it also, but I like to do it this way. And then I'm just going to trim off about a few inches of that thread. And then I'm going to tie, just as extra security, tie that extra thread to the yarn tail in a nice double knot. You want your knots to be tight, but not so super tight that they change the shape of your rainbow. And then you want to kind of twist around your knots that are at the bottom of the tails so that they're all towards the back of the rainbow so they don't show. And then you're just going to tie neighbor to neighbor. So I'm going to tie my pink to my mustard in a double knot. If you have thicker yarn, this is going to be a little more difficult, or it tends to want to leave a bump, so just be careful here. Just get that nice double knot. And then because I only have 3, I'm just going to go again neighbor to neighbor, so yellow to pink, and get my double knots. Perfect. So then you're going to trim off the excess super close to your knots so that nothing hangs down. And get those out of the way. Okay, so notice here I'm using my nice sewing scissors. Hopefully you have a pair of not so nice scissors to cut the tape off. So these are my IKEA scissors. So I like to stick the scissor blade right down in between the rope strands and cut the masking tape off. Then pull it apart and pull each tape piece off. I'm just going to trim off a little bit so I don't have to unravel quite as much and make it a little bit even to start with. This is just your initial rough cut. I'm going to take each strand of that rope and unravel. Mine is 3-ply cotton rope, so that's what I am unraveling. And if you get your kit, that's what is included in there. So you can unravel it. That's the first step to creating our fringe. Just go through every piece of rope. Sometimes I leave it curly, but if you want to fringe it out, you're going to use a wire brush and just brush away. I hold my hand on the bottom of the yarn so that I'm not accidentally tearing apart my yarn, and just brush, brush, brush until you have the nice soft texture that you're going for. So from there I'm going to go ahead and give it a little trim using my nice sharp fabric shear scissors. I like to hold it up over a trash can normally and just give it a trim. You can also brush a little bit with a hairbrush to get a nice finished look once you give it your little trim. So I'm just going to keep going until I like the shape of those fluffy clouds. Okay, so you're going to take your tiny little piece of macrame cord, your thinner piece, and you're going to tie 2 knots, each about 1.5 inches away from each other. This is going to be used to create the hanging string for the back of the rainbow. So you'll get it, so you can see it's a little arch shape there. Make sure those knots are nice and tight. Flip your rainbow over, make sure you're working on the back side. Give it a little zhuzh. Okay, and then you can take your Sharpie, use it to create the center, to find the center of your rainbow. And you can mark that with a little dot, so that way it'll hang straight. And then you can take and trim off the ends of your little hanging piece, so they don't hang down below your rainbow. Meanwhile, your hot glue gun was heating up. So you've got a nice hot glue gun, and you are going to just give 2 dabs of glue right on those knots, each knot, and press down. So a little dab, press it down. If you don't have a hot glue gun, you can stitch this on as well. It'll just take a little bit longer. So I found the hot glue works perfectly well. So make sure it's nice and locked in.